You're not crazy, and you're not lazy. And no, constant cravings, exhausting workouts, and hating the mirror is not your forever, especially not after 40, no matter what they've told you. Body freedom is stable energy, balanced hormones, eating carbs without fear of gaining weight, and feeling great naked. And that's exactly where this podcast is taking you. Welcome to the Body Freedom Podcast, where we dig into all things women's health and give you the real actionable tools to claim body freedom for yourself. Follow the show and leave a 5-star rating. It's how more women find us. Stephanie Mara Fox is a somatic nutritional counselor, mentor, and educator specializing in the connection between the nervous system, emotional health, and eating behaviors. With a master's degree in somatic psychotherapy and a PhD currently in progress, she is the creator of Somatic Eating, a body-oriented therapeutic approach designed to help women heal binge eating, emotional eating, chronic dieting, and body image struggles by addressing the root nervous system patterns driving them. For over a decade, Stephanie has guided women, coaches, and wellness professionals around the world toward a more regulated, empowered relationship with food and their bodies. Her work has been featured in the International Body Psychotherapy Journal, Somatic Psychotherapy Today, Authority Magazine, and major wellness summits focused on nutrition and somatic healing. Stephanie's mission is to help women feel safe in their bodies again so they can create a more nourished, grounded, and fully satiated life. Stephanie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm excited to have you. We're going to have such an important conversation.
I am thrilled to connect with you again. Yeah, I know just from our little chat before we hit record, I'm really excited to talk about all the things we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to start off with, pretty much exactly what I said in the green room or before we hit record is that in my practice, I find that the nervous system piece is so tough for women to implement, not just cognitively, but even to find time in their day, because they don't see, and this is me paraphrasing, they don't see the instant gratification of nervous system work like they see meal prep or workout. So it's easy to tick those things off the list, but then when it really comes down to understanding their bodies and deep diving inside, the dishes seem more important. So can we start by just helping women understand how to even implement something like this and feel the difference pretty quickly?
Yeah. Well, first, with how popularized nervous system regulation, I don't even like to use that term anymore. I like to more think of nervous system flexibility or nervous system attunement, where we're just showing up for what is happening in the nervous system, rather than this idea that the nervous system is broken and we need to fix it by regulating it. The nervous system is doing exactly what it's meant to do when it feels threatened or overwhelmed or stressed or endangered. Is, for anyone who also is new to nervous system work, I always like to explain we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, usually what people are talking about. And the autonomic nervous system is automatic. So when you feel like you are in danger or in threat, your autonomic nervous system automatically turns on for you. And this is different than feeling an emotion. So that has also gotten really confusing. People are like, well, if I'm angry, am I in the sympathetic nervous system? No. Now, if you perceive anger as threatening and dangerous, then your fight or flight response will turn on when you start to feel anger because of how you perceive and what you've been taught or your past experiences with anger. So they're two separate things. You don't have to regulate every emotion and try to always be this Buddhist calm Zen person that's never feeling anything. So I think that also puts a lot of pressure on people that they see all these nervous system regulation practices of shaking, of cold exposure, of all these things. And they're like, when am I going to have time to do that? I'm a parent. I have my own business. I'm just trying to survive. Have a neurodivergent brain that's constantly navigating sensory input. What do you mean just remind myself to shake whenever I'm feeling threatened? And also, like, if it's something that you feel like you're supposed to be doing, that still might not be effective because it's not actually attuning to what's happening in my body right now and what do I need in this moment. So if we come back to this just explanation of the autonomic nervous system, I always see it as the pedals in a car. So we have our sympathetic nervous system and our parasympathetic nervous system, and we need both. Often the sympathetic nervous system gets a bad rap, that it's like we're never supposed to be in this fight or flight response. But if we see it more as the state of mobilization, that's your gas pedal. And then the parasympathetic nervous system's kind of like your brake. It slows you down, helps you feel safe. That's, our brake pedal. So some of the work is starting to identify, and this actually can happen much faster in our day. It only needs to really take a second to be like, what pedal am I pressing on right now? And how long have I been there? Have I been pressing on the gas a little too long that I'm starting to deplete myself? Or have I actually been stepping on the brake a little bit too long where I feel immobile and I kind of need to step on the gas a little bit to mobilize and get myself up and moving a little bit? So we need both. And this is where, in my work with binge eating and the binge restrict cycle and dieting, I find that a lot of the times food is trying to help us move into different nervous system states to either mobilize us or immobilize us based off of the food behavior and the kinds of foods that we're eating. So it's not actually a food problem. It is, we are trying to utilize food to facilitate a sense of safety because we maybe haven't been taught or know any other way to do that.
Interesting. So I love the analogy of the brake and gas. I think that's really simple for women to implement in a day. If, when they have a minute, if they're trying to become more aware of what they're feeling, it becomes very logical. So I really love that. It's not a food problem. It is our subconscious bodies that are choosing foods that will either bring us back into parasympathetic state or drive us into sympathetic state out of true physiological, what do you want to say? Not experience, but physiological response. Like something that is ultimately not you. It is your subconscious. It is what your body is designed to do, utilizing one of our most powerful tools, which is food. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, a little bit. That basically, once you feel like the urge to binge or restrict, we get to see that your body's probably already in a survival response. And usually by that point, you're already typically a little dissociated and not in your body. So your body has taken over and is like, I've got you. And there are many reasons why we might choose food or skip a meal. For example, skipping meals can be there can be a high that can come from that. And so it can be a very mobilizing experience in the body because food can feel very stabilizing and grounding. And that if you don't feel like you are feeling safe to slow down, you're in a fight or flight response, and everything, once we are in a sympathetic nervous system state, our perception of the world and other people changes. We'll start to perceive the world as unsafe. We'll start to perceive other people as not on our side, not on our team. Everyone's against us. So all of that is actually the way we think or perceive the external world or the people that we typically know are maybe even on our team most of the time, that we're like, oh, why am I starting to view them this way? It's already information from your body that you have moved into a sympathetic state. So I always like to see, like, what is the body communicating through how we're interacting with others, the world, food, because it all tells us how we're digesting and processing our external world. So in the experience of like skipping a meal, yeah, if you're like, I have to keep going. What do you mean slow down? What do you mean ground myself? Your body's going to fight you on that. And it's going to be like, we don't have time for this meal right now. Whereas with binge eating, I find that it can do both that it can immobilize us. So sometimes having so much food in our body, it's the only way that we feel like we can ground ourselves and contain ourselves and feel safe to be still. I can't move. I've just eaten so much food. I don't even have the capacity to do anything. And that's the only time that maybe it feels safe to actually be still. Whereas some other times, eating a lot of food can be a way to mobilize, where it's like, okay, I've been sitting here, I'm stuck, I'm in even functional freeze, which is just like you're frozen, but there's so much you feel like you need to do, that eating a bunch of food now just gave you tons of energy that you're like, okay, now we can go do all the things that we feel like we need to do. So yeah, I really see that it's always asking the question, like in my work that I have trademarked called somatic eating, the main question that I like to ask is, what is the body trying to communicate through food or body image behaviors? Once we go into that sense of curiosity, curiosity shifts us into the parasympathetic nervous system. So just even meeting the behavior with less judgment, less shame, less guilt, you can actually start to turn on your prefrontal cortex and be able to rationalize and think through a little bit easier. You know, like if you're still in a survival response, the prefrontal cortex is kind of shut down where we do our rational, logical thought. But it can feel a little bit easier to start to be like, okay, there's wisdom to this. Let me just start to meet it with curiosity of what is this trying to help me with?
I love that. I think food in general brings so much shame for so many people. Whether that is eating birthday cake at your kid's birthday, and now all of a sudden you're carrying guilt for that. What if it is indulging more at Thanksgiving or Christmas in front of your family and you're concerned what they're thinking about you? Or, binge eating alone, whatever the choice is. The question is, why are we making this choice? Not, I hate myself for making this choice.
Yeah. Sometimes
Right?
food, especially when these behaviors started so young, it is the smartest, most adaptive, wisest thing you could have done. I really actually don't even like to use the term eating disorder or disordered eating anymore, because it is not disordered. If you started this at 3, 4, 5 years old, this was the most ordered thing you could do for yourself, of like, no one's there for me. No one's checking in on me. I'm experiencing experiences that are way too much for this little body to handle, but the kitchen is open and I can go and walk into the kitchen and find something that's going to make me feel better and make me feel safer, even if it's for a short period of time. And so I find that especially when these behaviors start so young, we have to see the wisdom in it. And then it does become habitual in our bodies, where it's like starts to become the only place where we feel safe, or even where we feel safe to play. Because if it didn't feel safe to express ourselves, to speak up for ourselves, food really helped us be with a lot of discomfort of either shoving down our voice or being in misalignment or feeling like we don't matter. Food kind of helped us with all of that. So we also get to meet this with a lot of compassion, that you are doing this for a reason. And sometimes it's that the body is still living in these past experiences, believing that that's still happening, that someone that you needed to pay attention, you needed them to pay attention to you, isn't going to pay attention to you. You're not going to be met, seen, held, heard the way you needed to be. And the body still thinks that it's in that environment. And that's where somatic work comes in, where we kind of need to update the body that you're not in those environments anymore, and point out how, like, where are you seen? Where are you held? Where do you feel like you matter? How do you feel like you belong? So that slowly the body can be updated of like, oh, we don't live in that environment anymore. We can maybe be more in the parasympathetic nervous system response, where we feel less food cravings just naturally.
Can you tell me, I have two other types of eating that I would like
Mm-hmm.
for you to help me understand and help women understand maybe where it's coming from. So let's talk about restrictive eating. So we just talked about binge eating. Let's talk about restrictive eating. And in my practice, I see a lot of real fear around eating enough. And let me just clarify what eating enough means. Lots of women that I work with have been on 1,200 calorie diets for 25
Mm-hmm.
years.
Yeah.
If I suggest, let's bump up, let's slow, like as slow can possibly be, the fear will take over and they will be in freeze mode. We could be talking about it for a year before they even go, I could go 50 calories more. Like the true fear of gaining weight or feeling sluggish or unproductive maybe
Mhm.
will literally stop them from progressing in their health, nourishing themselves, because they have this deep-seated belief that lower is better. Can you help us understand maybe where that might come from?
This is so multi-layered. So I always go to, there's an attachment perspective, there's a physiology perspective around how we feel when we start to eat more. And then there's kind of the nervous system perspective of whatever we know is what is associated with safety. So let's start with the just attachment perspective for a second of we mimic often what we grew up around with food. So one, food can become a replacement for secure attachment, especially like hyperpalatable foods that get, again, a lot of criticism towards them, but also hyperpalatable foods taste the same every single time. And
Mm.
so they can kind of mimic the felt sense of I'm going to receive a similar experience. It's going to be consistent. It's reliable. I'm going to feel soothed in this, that it produces the same experience of a securely attached parent. So there's also wisdom to, again, why we go towards the foods that we go towards. But also when it comes to restriction, that if what we grew up around was, I'm not going to be seen, I'm not going to be heard, I'm not going to be met, we also get used to that feeling of lack. And we will mimic with food the feeling of lack because it becomes what is known. So to eat an abundant amount of food and feel satiated and satisfied and stabilized and balanced and grounded is going to feel so uncomfortable and unknown in your nervous system because it is not what you grew up around. It is not a felt sense that your body has gotten comfortable with yet. So that's why I always like to normalize that the things that we think and have this idea would be really healthy for us to like eat 3 meals a day, to stabilize our blood sugar levels, to give our body all the nutrients it needs to thrive and function well, is actually going to feel truly horrible at first. It's going to feel so uncomfortable. And that's why we want to ease into that experience where usually if I'm working with someone who's maybe like skipping meals or really under nutritioning their body, yeah, we have to start really, really slow and even kind of contain the experience of what do you need before, what do you need during, what do you need after. In my work of somatic eating, I call them embodied transitions. We need an embodied transition into a meal or eating experience, and we need an embodied transition out of it because there's going to be actually a lot that somatically shows up in that experience that's going to feel really uncomfortable. And just like we would for a best friend, for an animal, for a baby, if someone we love is feeling really uncomfortable, we would just be there for them. How can I support
Mhm.
you? What do you need in this? We kind of have to do that for our body because it's going to feel really threatened and endangered in that experience where the sympathetic nervous system is going to turn on. So there's that piece. And then, what I was naming about, I included bits and pieces in there of the nervous system, that the sympathetic nervous system will turn on as you start to consider eating more, because I also want to bring in the culture that we live in and how much we live in a world with weight stigma. And that it is actually very scary to gain weight in this world, especially for women. And
Mhm.
with everything that we're seeing culturally right now of lots of shrinking bodies, I never want to diminish that it is actually very scary to be the fish that's swimming upstream being like, I'm going to do this differently. Especially when from a somatic perspective, our bodies want to team up with other bodies because that brings us a sense of co-regulation. But there can also be co-dysregulation because our bodies want to be in unison and connection with other bodies. If all the bodies around us are dysregulated, we will co-dysregulate with them and think,
Yeah.
okay, I must need to lose weight too, because that's what my body is seeing of all other bodies. So I must need to do that as well. So there's also that piece that to eat more is going to feel also literally dangerous to your body, because it's like, well, then how are we going to feel safe in this world if we are like leaving the pack? So I'll pause there because I know that was a lot, but there's a lot of layers to the wisdom of why we will skip a meal or under nutrition our body.
Oh my goodness. I feel like that's probably what I see more. I'm not disregarding binge eating and its importance
Sure.
at all.
Yeah.
But women often come to me because they're looking to lose weight and they have done all the extremes, right? And oftentimes it's trying to get them to eat more and to understand, how do you help somebody recognize less of the logic? I'm afraid to, like, if somebody says to me, I'm afraid to eat more than 1,200 calories. How do you then turn that inward? Because to say I'm afraid to eat it, great, you've recognized that you're afraid to eat it, but it's a very logical thing. I'm afraid to gain weight. How do you then get them to go, okay, I do believe, because it's a belief now that you're trying to shift that may have been ingrained since they were a child watching their mother, right? Or their sister or their aunts or whatever, their parents. How do you then help them go, this isn't just I'm afraid to eat more because I'm going to gain weight and that's just what it is. It's so surface level. How do you help them understand that this goes much deeper and that the story is actually a lie? You know what I mean? They're telling themselves, I'm sorry, that invalidates. It feels real.
Sure.
It feels very real. And I'm not trying to say it doesn't feel real. What I'm trying to say is that our brains are trying to protect us. And sometimes what it tells us isn't the whole truth.
Totally. Yeah.
So how do I'm thinking about somebody in particular. And do you think it's just about starting a practice before eating a meal? What do I need? I need to, give myself a hug, whatever that looks like. I'm afraid, I need to give myself a hug. If my son told me he was afraid, I would give him a hug. I'm afraid, I need to give myself a hug. If they aren't truly embodying it, can it become a practice and eventually they will embody it? Should they just start doing it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Totally supporting yourself before you enter into something that feels uncomfortable can be very helpful. A couple of things here. First, the other piece that I want to add, and then I'll answer that, is that it will actually feel physiologically, also just biologically uncomfortable when you start eating more, because your body has been in a survival response and it has not felt like it could rest at all. Like your body's literally trying to keep you alive, eating not enough food at all for your body, especially if you physically move your body a lot and navigate high levels of stress. So when you start eating more, I think also the uncomfortable piece can be you will actually feel exhausted, because that is actually your body getting a chance to move into repair before it can enter into maintenance. And I think that piece is missed a lot, that people often are like, oh, it feels so much better to eat more. And they're focused on that, but it misses actually a period of time when you do start eating more that you're not going to feel that way, because your body is exhausted living in probably a fight or flight response for a really long time, trying to keep itself alive, not getting enough nutrition. So your body will feel tired. You will need to take more naps. You will need to get more sleep for a period of time until your body has replenished itself and now feels like it can move into maintenance, where then you start feeling maybe more energized, want to move your body more, thinking clearer. But there is kind of that wonky transition in the middle. So coming back to the question of, first, I feel like a lot of people associate embodiment with being with discomfort. And it's a lot of what I've talked about so far today as well. But sometimes we first have to update that being in your body can be a neutral or good experience. And before you even start attending to food, because that's probably like the most uncomfortable thing to focus on, we need to be like, what's it like just to be in my body? And I usually like to start with, like, if you paid attention to the tip of your nose right now, what does that feel like? And usually when I bring my attention to the tip of my nose, I feel a lot of spaciousness because I feel nothing. There's no sensation there whatsoever. I would have to touch my nose or scratch my nose or bring in some input, sensory input around my nose to actually know what it feels like to have a nose. Otherwise, I'm like, I know I have a nose, but I don't feel any sensation there right now. That is embodiment. I am embodying my nose. I do not feel anything at the tip of my nose currently, unless I needed to scratch it. So just starting there begins to very slowly update that embodiment can actually be a very calm, neutral experience. It doesn't have to be this overwhelming, I'm connecting with the tension, the tightness, the shallow breathing, the constriction. It's just first like, what's your earlobe feel like? What about your kneecaps? What about your elbows? Like our periphery, our extremities that just don't really feel like much a lot of the time. Once we start practicing that, I've seen so many people that be huge for them to be like, even when they're having a rough moment, to shift their attention to a totally neutral body part. Like, just like turn down the volume on everything because you are giving yourself a singular focus of something that also is happening right here and right now. Like just because your belly feels tight or you're feeling fluttery sensations in your chest doesn't mean that's what your entire body is experiencing. So there's that piece. And then I like to bring it to things that feel good. Like when you're super thirsty, what is it like to drink a cold glass of water? Or when you've been needing to go to the bathroom and you finally get out of a meeting and you're able to go to the bathroom, what's that like to feel that sense of relief? There's also these tiny little moments that we're having throughout a day that feel really good and really satisfying to also be like, this is not the only experience I'm having in my body. I have all these other moments that it's like, oh, this feels so good to feel hydrated. This feels so good to go to the bathroom. I'm obsessed with my dog. I love him so much. It feels so good to just like snuggle with my dog for a second. So there's all of these moments that we can start to embody and bring more presence towards before we even focus on what's going on with food, because that might feel too much to be with. And I always like to normalize that if the food behaviors, binge eating or restriction, is coming in as a response to past trauma, what trauma does is it takes away our sense of choice. And a lot of the work is to increase our sense of choice, but also to go after the healing, not the same way the trauma happened. So if the trauma happened too much too fast, we can't do the healing the same way as too much too fast, where that's oftentimes our brains are going really quick. I have to do this. I have to eat that thing. I have to take this out of my house. I have to move my body in this way. That's really quick that we're trying to shift things for ourselves. But the body moves at a much slower pace typically than our mind does. And sometimes we have to go at the pace of our body to send a different message up to our brain that it's safe to be here. So, that's a little bit of where I would start with, because once you start moving towards food, there's a lot that's going to show up, and we want to build your capacity to first be with your body.
I love this. I want to draw the parallel here. The tip of the nose analogy, the earlobes. I was like kind of scanning my body as you were saying that to like feel where I feel nothing, right?
Yeah.
And the openness of that. And there's a saying, what you focus on expands. So the idea, I'm drawing the parallel to what you just said and embody yourself that feel neutral or that feel good is just as important as understanding the discomfort. And the parallel I'd like to draw is we are all so conditioned to have gratitude and share our wins, right? This is like really similar in the sense that people understand the mindset. If I write down what I'm grateful for, I'm going to feel better because I've now recognized some positives in my day instead of focusing on the negatives. Same thing with wins. You might have a bad day, but can you come up with 3 things that you won today? And often all of these things we list are very logical, but we do recognize that they make us feel good. So if we can shift that to your analogy of just focusing on the tip of your nose or whatever body part you can think about and get into, remember that what you focus on expands. If we are constantly focused on fixing our bodies, then that's all you're going to see is a broken body. But if you start to recognize that your nose it just exists, it's just great, it's just there. It doesn't mean anything, it's neutral, and that's great. Or that drink of water, if you focus on how great that feels, you are now less about fixing your body and being grateful for the positive feeling or the positive feedback your body can give you. And I think that's important to expand. Did you know that your nervous system can't regulate without minerals? When you're dehydrated or low on electrolytes, your body stays in stress mode, which means more cravings, worse digestion, and zero body freedom. That's why I drink Paleo Valley electrolytes every day. No sugar, totally clean, just real minerals your body actually needs. Link is in the show notes.
Yeah, and I want to add on to that of you might only be able to be there for 1 second. So I see this a lot in my private practice and in my programs that once we start doing this work, you'll notice, oh, you feel good. And then immediately you start thinking about like, but I need to still skip lunch today. And it doesn't actually have to do with the food or skipping that meal. Or the other thing that can be like, I want to go eat a cookie. Like you suddenly felt neutral and you're like, why do I want to eat a cookie right now? Really, the thoughts about food are trying to get you back into a nervous system state that you know and feels comfortable. It doesn't really actually have to do with skipping the meal or eating the cookie. Like, nothing wrong with eating a cookie. Just want to add that. Mm-hmm. But like the random thought that comes in that moment is, this feels uncomfortable. I can't stay here with this. I don't have the capacity to be here longer with this more than 1 second. And so then we think of our food behaviors as a way to get us back into a nervous system state that we know. So I always like to normalize that piece, because so many people start to think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just stay with this? Your body doesn't know that yet. And it's kind of like with any thing that you want to learn, the more that you practice anything, the more comfortable you get with that thing. It's the same thing with being with an experience of safety and relaxation and stillness and joy and happiness. We kind of have to rebuild our capacity to be with these things for longer periods of time. So usually in those moments, I like to meet it with, of course I'm thinking about this right now. Of course I started thinking about food. Of course I started thinking about skipping the next meal. This makes so much sense. That was my body telling me it was done with that sense of peace. It needed something else. And then you might try to practice being with it for 2 seconds or 5 seconds or 10 seconds and very slowly build your capacity to be with these things, but it's not going to be there at first.
I think that's a great expectation. Just keep trying. Okay, my next thing that I wanted to ask you. So we've talked about binge eating. We've talked about restrictive eating. Let's talk about this idea that wanting to improve has become almost shameful in our world today. Because there is some confusion around self-love, self-worth, and never having discipline, eating whatever I want when I want it. So not binge, but just not discipline. And discipline now equals I hate myself, and eating freely. You know what? Hold on. I don't want to say eating freely, because I think that you can eat freely. But understanding, I'm trying to choose my words carefully because I don't want anybody to misunderstand this.
Sure. Yeah. It's a really complicated conversation. Like talking about food is really layered and nuanced, and it's not this simple, like, shouldn't I just eat food and be comfortable with that? It is so layered in what even informs us of, we are constantly passing every single food decision through cognition, biology, somatics, tradition, ritual. It's not so easy of just choose a food and eat it. So I just wanted to add that of like, I get like the kind of push and pull internally when talking about food, because it actually really needs to be so bio-individualized based off of what works for each person's body. And there is a lot of confusion these days of, I can't tell you how many people come to me now and be like, I don't even know how to eat anymore.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I mean. Like, I mean, social media, the government, like it doesn't matter where it's coming from. There's just like, it should be all protein. No, it should be high fat. No, it should be this. No, you should never restrict or have discipline around your food. Otherwise, it should be shame. You should have guilt. It is a lot of noise. And so how do you, or what's your stance on, a woman, I'm speaking to women because everybody who's listening to this podcast is a woman. How do you have discernment around this idea of I should be able to eat whatever I want and love myself? You know what I'm saying there. I know that those are not the right words, but you know what I'm saying.
I gotcha.
And also want to improve without becoming obsessed, or what the idea of obsession looks like. Because I went to my doctor this week with my twins, and my doctor, so they're 7 months old. They've been eating solids for about 2 months. And my doctor looked at me and goes, have they been eating solids? I said, yes. She goes, I'm not even going to ask. I know you're crazy. So you're doing fine. And in my head, I was like, did my doctor just tell me? And we have a good relationship. She did not mean it in a negative way.
Yeah.
She meant it she knows that I will feed my babies healthy whole foods that will serve their bodies to grow and flourish from the start. And what's so interesting is that she called me crazy because I feel that I'm going to give my babies the best start in life that I possibly can. That is my responsibility as a mother. That's how I feel. So that's what I mean about our world today, is that healthy eating, whether that's disciplined or sometimes eating a cookie or having, it's looked at as obsession. It's looked at as self-harm. It's looked at as a negative. And all of a sudden you have a whole nother population of women who are saying, if I eat like garbage all the time with no discernment at all, that means I love my body. So where do you, I don't even know what the question is here. Where do you stand?
No, I got you. Yeah, I do. I see this all the time. So I know what you're talking about. And again, this is really nuanced. And first, what I see because I also work predominantly with women, what I see for a lot of women is that, one, the embodied experience of dieting and the experience of restriction gets associated with also certain foods. So it's not a logical thing all the time. That if you start eating more fruits and vegetables, for example, if when you were on a diet, that was all you ate, fruits and vegetables are now connected to a lack of safety. I'm going to be restricted. I'm not going to get enough food. So eating more vegetables or adding them into a balanced meal of all of your macronutrients that we need can actually feel really uncomfortable at first, because your body fears it's going back to the experience of dieting. And I always like to normalize that when we talk about a trauma, that sometimes people think it's like this past experience that's in the way distant past, and it happened when you were like a kid or some really traumatic event that happened to you. Dieting can be traumatic to your body. You basically potentially put it into a survival response for months on end. And the same experience of dieting, of lack of choice, of lack of safety, of looking to external cues for what you should do for yourself rather than internal cues. There's a lot of overlaps of what we know about trauma and what happens in a diet. So when we start to eat in that way, it is more of a somatic memory that happens, and your body's trying to protect you. It's like you should now go eat, I don't know, fill in the blank food, that whole box bag, canister, whatever of food, because it's like, I want to make sure I'm not going to be deprived again, like in the past when you were eating these foods. So it does take some time to update the associations with some whole foods in that perspective. I always also, from, again, a somatic perspective, like to go off of, how does this make you feel? And that's why some of the groundwork of first we have to get into your body, build what's called your interoceptive awareness, which is knowing the felt sense of your body. So interception. And that's knowing when your hunger and fullness cues, your thirst cues, your heart rate, your breath, different sensations that can happen. If we are, one, have had a past trauma, interoception is usually low. If we're navigating neurodivergency, interoception can usually be a little bit lower. And that makes it very difficult to make food decisions. When we don't understand or receiving our body's feedback, it's really hard to be like, I don't know what I need. I don't know if I'm still hungry. I have no clue. I don't know what I'm even tracking. So that's why some of this work is first we have to increase interoception to even start receiving your body's feedback, to feel like you can know what you need and when with food. So there's that piece. And what I also often find is that we have to start to kind of update your somatic memory around how do foods actually feel in your present day body. Because often we're going off of the distant past of how foods felt in the past or what we have associated with that. So, for example, one of the things that I used to binge on in my binge eating years, and I just hope for anyone listening, I have not had an experience of binge eating or even felt the urge to in almost 15 years. So I do believe that recovery is possible and these behaviors can dissipate and go away. But was ice cream. And I have so many amazing, wonderful, joyful, laughter experiences eating ice cream as a kid. And so now when you have these associations with food based off of my memories with that food, and you move into a survival response as an adult, your body's like, well, what was going to help us feel good? And it's not rational. It's not logical. It doesn't have to be linear. It's just like, remember when we like laughed so hard with our best friends eating an entire pint of ice cream? Let's go eat a whole pint of ice cream. Maybe that'll do it. And you go and you eat a whole pint of ice cream and you're like, I feel worse. What happened? I thought that would do it. But we create these memories in the context of what we're eating them in, with family, with friends. We start to associate the laughter, the joy with the food. And not to say that that food can't still bring that thing, but sometimes based off of the context of when and what nervous system state and the environment we're eating that food in now, it's not going to produce the same experience. And at that point, once we start to embody that, I call it food grief. That we will feel an immense amount of grief that no matter how much food I eat in this moment, it's never going to make me feel the way I want to feel or feel the way I felt in the past. And grief is a huge part of any food recovery process because we are stepping more into the present moment of being with, well, who is my body now? And what resonates with it now and what stabilizes it now. And that's going to be maybe very different than what did it when we were younger or even a few years ago. And there can be grief in that, really realizing that like, oh, this isn't going to do it. And I was really relying on that to do the thing I wanted it to do. So there's a lot of layers to this, like I've been saying, of, you know, when it comes to the whole idea of like, do I eat this food or not? First, I find that it can't always be a planned thing. It has to be based off of our somatic feedback that we have to learn to receive of how is this food felt, of the memories I've been creating of it now. What kind of experience am I looking to have with food? How do I want to leave this eating experience with whoever I'm with? And will eating this food help me feel the way I want to feel and produce the experience that I want to have in my body? And that sometimes might mean it's going to move me more into a parasympathetic nervous system state. Sometimes that means it might move me more into a sympathetic state. And that might be something I'm looking for and to own that experience. But once we can collect what I call body data on all of this, it simplifies it where it's not like there's a right or wrong or good or bad. Like this is where food neutrality actually gets to be practiced, where it's, okay, based off of the fact that I'm home alone, I have to get up early tomorrow. I really want to get a good night's sleep. I know if I eat XYZ food that it's not going to make me feel good. It's not going to actually help me relax more. I'm going to wake up feeling horrible, and that's not how I want to feel. So it's not that I can't eat that food. It's just I'm saying no to that food in this moment based off of my body's feedback. And there may be another moment where you're like out, you're with friends, you're laughing, and someone says, hey, do you want to order this food? And you're like, yeah, that sounds great. I totally want to do that. I have nothing tomorrow. That sounds like a lot of fun. And in that moment, the full embodied yes is going to feel like it resonates and is an appropriate response. So I think we really have to get rid of this whole idea that one, there's like this right way to eat and we have to figure that out, or like there's something that's better than another thing, and really starting to notice, what is my body's feedback? What helps me feel the way I want to feel? And usually that will guide us towards a lot more balance, because that's what the body wants. It wants to find homeostasis and equilibrium, and it wants to receive the nutrients that it needs to thrive.
I feel like that was a mic drop. I feel like we could just end it there and be like, wow, that was incredible. I love this idea of body data. My whole program is built on data and understanding the body. And I want so much for every woman that I work with, and women listening and women in your practice and, across the world, to tune into themselves, like stop giving away their power to some movement over here that tells you eat whatever you want, no discernment at all, and that's the way it should be. Or over here and say, nope, you need to count, track, don't touch a cookie, it's bad, restrict, restrict, restrict to get where you want to be. Anytime anybody says you should or I should, what? No, go with how your body feels, truly feels, because A, it's so bio-individual first. And how empowering is it when you get to say, with no guilt, with no shame, even with no pride, like just leave the emotion out of it, where you can say, I don't want that, instead of I can't have that. Or, yes, I'm going to fully enjoy that because that's what I want right now. You know what I mean? Literally have no meaning about it. Like no meaning. It doesn't have to mean anything. It can just be. And it's so much more empowering when you're making the choice for yourself, not because you have a coach that tells you can or you can't, not because you have the internet screaming at you over here, not because your doctor tells you that something is, crazy, because it's for you. And that's the only person who can measure what's good for you.
Completely agree. And this is where I often find, because so many people I work with at this point have a history of past trauma, that food itself may be the way we express trauma, but it can also be an ally in healing trauma, because food can be a place where you feel the sense of choice that got taken away from you earlier on in your life, where right now it can feel like you're playing it out, where it doesn't actually feel like you have a choice. It feels like you have to eat in a certain way, or you have to eat that food to prove your recovery or something. Whereas when you're like, I really want to listen to my body and I get to choose what I eat based off of what helps me feel stabilized, it just changes it in that you feel like you can listen to yourself. You build that trust with yourself that no one gets to make that decision for you. And sometimes, that's going to look like bypassing a fullness cue, because you're like, I'm going to choose right now that I'm loving this meal and I'm having so much fun with my friends and my family that, I'm going to feel a little overly full, and I'm going to choose that. And that is totally fine because it's my choice. Or the experience of like, I really want to feel energized and vibrant and mentally clear and digestively easy today. And I know that XYZ foods and this combination is going to make me feel that way. And I keep saying fill in the blank foods because I'm very cautious about naming what foods are going to feel stabilizing to your body, because it is so unique to your body. There are some people who may thrive on higher protein, some people who may thrive on higher carbohydrates, some people who may need a certain amount of fiber at every meal. I don't know. I'm so cautious in being like, oh, this is what you have to eat to stabilize yourself, because then I'm just falling right into everything that you're trying to get away from, is listening to an external expert of what you should do with your body when I don't live in your body. you live in your body. I want to help you live more in your body so that you feel really empowered, that you can really understand and know what's going to work for you in your body. So, we get to really see that I feel like a lot of this journey in food recovery is rediscovering connection and safety and trust within yourself, so that you're also building what I like to call your satiated life, where it's like, it's not just about being satiated with your food, but you are in a life that feels satisfying and satiating in every area of your life.
You know what? I love it. In my world, we call it body freedom. And it is exactly the same meaning. It is exactly the same meaning. Thank you, Stephanie, for joining me today. Such a great conversation. It's bio-individual. We have to start listening to our bodies. We have to stop the external noise, even coming into my world or into your world, and wanting the accountability from us, wanting the guidance from us does not mean you outsource your power to us. It means that we're there to help. Remember, you are the one in the power. You are the one in the driver's seat, and you are the one capable of trusting and making the decisions that are best for yourself. So thank you for joining me. Will you let everybody know where they can find you?
Absolutely. I loved this conversation. Thanks so much for having me here. It's really important just to continue to have these conversations to dispel so many myths and confusions that are out there. So if you want to continue to explore this work, you can find me on every social media platform, mostly on Instagram @_Stephanie Mera. You can check me out on my website, stephaniemera.com, where you can find all the links to all my social media platforms. I also have a podcast that you were also on, loved our episode, called The Satiated Podcast. So go check out our episode also over there. And then I have a 3-month live program called the Somatic Eating Program. And I teach that twice a year. The next class is going to start at the end of May. The next class won't be until the end of October. And you can learn more about that at somaticeating.com. And feel free to join my newsletter. You'll get a free 5-day series kind of walking you through some of the steps that we talked about today. So it's kind of a 5 steps somatically exploring like emotional eating. And if you get any insights or aha moments from this episode and want to email me, support@stephaniemera.com, I would love to hear from anyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Stephanie.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
That's a wrap on today's episode of the Body Freedom Podcast. And remember, body freedom isn't a fantasy reserved for women in their 20s. It's stable energy, balanced hormones, eating carbs without fear, and feeling great naked at 40, at 50, at any age. And every episode is walking you one step closer. Before you go, if you're not sure what's actually blocking your body freedom, take my free metabolism quiz. In just a couple of minutes, you'll find out exactly what's going on with your metabolism and what to do about it. The link is in the show notes. And if today gave you even one shift, tap follow and leave a 5-star review. It's genuinely how more women find this show and start claiming body freedom for themselves. I'll see you next week.